Welcome to Knauf Insulation's step-by-step guide to topping up your loft insulation. Your loft should have at least 2 layers of insulation fitted, achieving a minimum depth of 270mm or 350mm in Scotland. You should have 100mm thick insulation to fit between the joists as a first layer. We recommend using a 200mm thickness for your second layer. Of course, the more insulation you add, the more energy you'll save. For advice on which products to buy, check our Everything You Need to Get Started guide. For step-by-step guidance on fitting your first layer of insulation, see our full installation video, or keep watching for advice on adding to or topping up your second layer. First, put on your overalls, dust mask, safety glasses, bump cap and gloves. Then make sure your loft is empty and the equipment you need for each stage is within reach. You'll need a tape measure, retractable knife, crawl boards and your loft roll insulation, which you should keep in its packaging outside the loft for now. If cutting insulation to size, while still in its packaging, you'll also need a fine-toothed handsaw. If you need to insulate a loft hatch, water tank, pipes or seal gaps around things like cables from the room below, you may need a few extra items. See our Homeowners Hub for more info. Before you get started, make sure any heat-producing fixtures like downlights are covered with non-combustible protection covers to prevent them from overheating and becoming a fire risk. Always make sure you follow the manufacturer's instructions when installing downlight covers. You must also ensure that any cables under a high electrical load, for example feeding an electric shower, are long enough to be laid on top of the full depth of insulation, as covering them creates a fire risk. If you're unsure whether your cables are appropriately sized for their load, speak to an electrician. If in doubt, always rest cables on top of insulation. Once everything is in place and your safety checks are done, you're ready to get started. Lay your crawl boards across your joists, ensuring they're supported by 3 joists. You'll use these to safely move around the loft without putting your foot through the ceiling. Assess the insulation you already have in place. How deep is it and how well laid? You'll want to fill any gaps that have been missed in the base layer, which may mean lifting and inspecting the previous workmanship. Aim to create a continuous layer of insulation which fills the gaps between the joists completely. It's best to insulate your eaves first and then fill the space in between. Begin at the bay furthest from your loft hatch and work towards it. If space at the eaves is limited, you may need to start with a 100mm roll, laying 200mm next to it as the roof height increases. There should be a 50mm gap between the top of your loft insulation and the underside of the roof to prevent condensation. Make sure this is maintained as you lay your second layer. Eaves vents are available to help with this. Roll your second layer and any subsequent layers out at 90 degrees to the first. Gently agitate the product to make sure it's expanded to its full thickness. Do this every time you unroll a new section. Cut notches in the insulation so it sits snugly round each rafter. Begin at one side of the loft and work your way across. Use your crawl boards and unroll from the side to avoid putting any weight on your insulation. When you come to the end of a roll, simply start a new one and press the ends of the 2 rolls firmly together, with no gap. If your loft has a water tank, don't cover the area directly underneath it, and remember to make sure any cables under a high electrical load are resting on top of your insulation. Continue until your entire loft space is covered, neatly cutting around any obstacles as you go. Fill any unwanted gaps with offcuts of insulation and make sure that the edges of each roll are firmly buttered together. Fit any additional layers at the same time as the second layer, continuing to unroll from the side and using your crawl boards across your joists. And you're done. An important final task is to insulate your loft hatch if it isn't pre-insulated already. You can find advice on how to do this, as well as how to store items in your loft without compressing your insulation on the Knauf Insulation Homeowners Hub. See the Knauf Insulation Homeowners Hub for more info.